Hello, welcome to Overcome with Travis White. This is a place for you to share your mental health stories. Tonight's guest, we're speaking with Joanna Lilley. She is a therapeutic consultant and specializes in helping young adults. Joanna, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Travis.
Pleasure's all mine. I think we're going to have a great conversation.
I'm
So,
excited.
without wasting more time, I'm just going to hand the microphone over to you and have you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I will collect myself as best as possible. I think that there's a spotlight for me in the work that I do with young adults as it relates to my own young adult experience. And that has to do with a pretty significant amount of anxiety and not actually understanding how anxiety was harming me. Right. And I was also just kind of like medicating in ways that felt like it was shutting my brain off, but like I just never was able to turn off. I was constantly in a state of what's next? Where am I going? Like kind of looking outward to measure myself up compared to other people. I was also transient enough in employment where I did not have like consistency literally in jobs and living in certain areas. And so I never had, like, literally for 5 years after I graduated from undergrad, I just worked seasonally. I was all over the place, truly all over the map. And in those moves, and because I was constantly on the go, I never had the opportunity to like actually have somebody stop and say, "Hey, Joanna," like literally shaking me by the shoulders, like, "Dude, you just need to slow down. You need to speak with a therapist. You need to do some breathing exercises. You need to have a anti-anxiety medication or the combination of the lot." Just kind of took me at face value. And it took me a really long time to realize, A, not only was it not sustainable, but it like really did some pretty serious damage to, I shouldn't say damage. It did enough to organs in my body that it took future functional medicine practices to like totally start to like recalibrate and get me to a place. Like right now, I'm mellow. Even 5 years ago, I was still in like just a wild, like, how the heck did I get here? How do I unwind kind of situation? And it was, as a young adult, it was about this like existential, who am I? Where am I going? Where am I headed? And then in my early 30s, it was, I launched this business. Now I've got to hustle to make it like happen and be successful. And I just realized too, in all of this, like the business too that I operate is helping other people. And so it just kind of hit me real hard that at some point it was just like, I have to actually practice what I preach, right? That's really what it
Yeah.
comes down to. So yeah, it took a lot of work, but it was like in hindsight, it was messy. And I think because of that, I have so much empathy for the young adults I work with right now who, when I see them and they're panicking or their anxiety is just flooding them and they don't know where to start or even like where to begin or how to get help, or they can't literally, if they hold a mirror up to their face, like they don't see that like how they're operating is not sustainable or healthy. Again, I just have extreme empathy for
Yeah.
the young adults I'm working with.
And I feel like that's such a hard period of life. Like it's so hard. It's like that transition from high school to college. You're still really young,
Yeah.
but it's like and you're starting to question a lot of things. Most of the time you're just getting away from your parents for the first time. So it's almost like you're trying to figure yourself out.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, they say it's I think, three I's, right? It's independence, identity, and intimacy, which is supposed to just kind of be another I that falls in the space of like relationships, right? Who do you want to be with, both romantically and like who are your people now that you're outside of the home? And I think what you're talking about too is just like belief systems. For
Mhm.
me, my belief system was I don't tell people that I'm struggling. Like even and it's just ironic too because I grew up in a family with like mental health providers, but for whatever reason culturally it was just like, "Joanna, get your shit together. Like you got this. Like this is not an issue." But that belief system was so ingrained in me that I could not see. Like, I mean, I was basically like cutting off my nose to spite my face as a young adult as I'm launching into like my own path, but not realizing that like basically the thing that fueled me was my anxiety.
Yeah, that's kind of cool because you almost figured out the superpower that your anxiety brings and have been using it.
Yeah.
I love to hear stories like that.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not like, let me be clear, it's not like my anxiety went away. I
Yeah.
just figured out how, for a very long time, it was not, I was not harnessing it like a superpower. I was letting it run my life, and I was constantly playing catch up. I was constantly tired. I was constantly dreading things. And it took me like being very, very intentional, seeking help, not just from like one provider, but from multiple providers, right? Seeing a therapist, seeking, like doing chiropractic work. I was also seeing an acupuncturist. I also did functional medicine. I just like, clearly I have some interest in Eastern like medicine type philosophies, but it was just like, it's in my body, right? It's not just
Mhm.
like, let me go take a med or also like do talk therapy. It was like, I have to literally recalibrate where my body is and bring my nervous system back down.
Yeah, and I don't think that's one thing, the important thing that I don't think people really understand. Because I think a lot of people have this misconception that mental health is just mental health. But no, it's all integrated. And I've been going through a lot of the learning type stuff with functional medicine in the last year. And it's hands down one of the best things I've ever done.
Yeah. Right. It's like the best gift we can give ourselves.
Hmm.
It only took us into like older adulthood, not emerging
Yep.
adulthood.
So, what are the most common mental health challenges you see in young adults during this basically transition phase?
Yeah, great question. I would say that a lack of purpose or direction is huge. Oftentimes that, like the fear, right, that exists with that adriftness is what fuels a lot of the mental health stuff, right? So it's like this, if all of a sudden we aren't anchored to any type of path, any type of like interest or purpose, then that's where anxiety can breed. Like I don't even know, this is the like flooded, like I don't even know where to start. And even if I did know where to start, there's so many options. What if I pick the wrong path, right? So it just like goes down this really, really dangerous kind of irrational thought pattern or kind of like path. On the other hand, what I also see too is just depression, because there is such significant, and this is kind of the double-edged sword of access to technology, where we have so many people that are seeing all of the devastation in the world, right? Politics, war, the economy, the environment, like the divisiveness that exists in all areas. I'm getting a lot of this like existential dread. What's the point, right? If it's not the person that's like, oh my gosh, where do I have to do something, but I don't know what to do. On the other hand, it's like, F it. I'm just going to hang in the basement and smoke some weed and just like numb myself and hope that like tomorrow, either I don't wake up or tomorrow won't be as bad.
Yeah, and I feel like it's such a different world than what I grew up in. So I'm hitting the big 40, the big 40. And
Welcome.
so I'm like really nervous about it for some reason. But I just look back to the time like I was that age, and it was like we didn't have like the social media to compare ourselves.
Yeah.
The internet wasn't like readily available. It was beginning to be to that point,
Yeah.
but it plays such a huge role. And I think it's worse off for the younger generation.
Yeah. I mean, especially right now, young adults that are like, when I say young adults, I'm talking about 18-year-olds right now. And 18-year-olds were born in 2004. Right?
Hmm.
Am I doing my math right? I don't actually
Yeah,
remember. Okay, good.
it's
Because
something like something.
maybe not. Maybe it was even earlier. Maybe it's, I don't know. Anyways, gosh, I'm gonna be really embarrassed if my math is wrong. But
No,
you know
I
what?
think no, I think you're right. You're
I'm
right.
gonna
You're right.
I'm gonna own it because I'm so tired and I really don't care. All I can say is for certainty, I was already out of high school by the time these young people were even born, and so even though I look younger than I really am, and that's a great point of connection with the young adults I work with, I do have a distinct understanding of like their development, like their adolescence was vastly different than mine. If social media was a thing when I was a teen, I can only imagine the chaos that would have ensued, right? Like the social
Hmm.
tensions, the like just I mean, the body dysmorphia that like shows up because you're constantly seeing yourself or seeing others and then comparing your body. I mean, there's a lot. And I just have such strong, again, empathy for what it is that young adults right now are having to go through to find themselves to launch independently in a world where it feels like it's impossible.
Yeah, I love it. It is you lived feeling anxious, so
Yeah.
you've been there, so it's
Yeah.
even better.
Yeah.
So, next question for you though is how can parents tell the difference between normal adjustment stress like versus something more serious?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, that the like baseline is dependent on the knowledge and relationship that a parent has with their young adult. So, like, I would love to just give a generic answer, but then I want to like front load. Hey, if you don't have an open relationship with your young adult, it's really easy to make assumptions, or it's easy to assume everything. Like the assumption could be everything's fine, right? Or it could be, oh my gosh, like I see you struggling, and the parent jumps into like major, like solution focused or fix it mode, which again, I see all of those things. As a parent, what's normal is homesickness, right? That's separation, and that goes both ways. For a parent, all of a sudden your role is also like, oh my gosh, I'm not needed as much as I used to be. So okay, now I got to give you the space to kind of figure it out, and I feel really uncomfortable not knowing where you are, which is why sometimes the separation of like, no, you can't keep tracking like life 360 on your child's phone. Like you got to give them the space to like
Mhm.
uh, build their own experiences and trust that they'll be able to survive. Um, but where I get concerned is if, as a parent, you notice significant differences in their level of functioning. So that could be communication, right? Having somebody that used to be bubbly and like overly communicative and wanting to be involved to all of a sudden no communication, not just like, oh, I'm not initiating, but not even responding. Like parents that are like, I sent you a text to check in and I haven't heard from you for 2 weeks. That's not normal. I would use that like a spidey sense, right? Going off of like, ooh, we should probably check in. Or somebody that's making comments that feel like really like passively suicidal, even like the world would be better off without me, or like, gosh, I just wish that, I wasn't here. It would make things easier. If that's not normal, lean into that and ask more questions. I mean, again, just pay attention to behaviors, right? Are they isolating? Are they numbing by all of a sudden, like going out to the bars every night? Have they completely retreated? Are they, just basically what you're looking for is, are their behaviors extreme enough where it feels like it's destructive in some capacity, right? Isolating to the point of like extreme concern, or like, going out and partying and like self-sabotaging in ways that also feel equally as destructive. So for me, what's normal is struggling, right? Like
Mhm.
finding your friends, losing a job, having a breakup, being sad, like that stuff is normal. It's everything else that just like really is on the fringe that feels extreme. That's where, as a parent, I would be concerned.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing that you pointed out because as you know, you make that move out of your home environment, there are going to be struggles,
Yeah.
like very much so.
Yeah. Well, and Travis, I don't want to exclude the young adults that still live at home with their parents, cuz that's actually a
Exactly,
common thing
exactly.
too.
Yeah,
But
that's a
if
good
you're
point.
like, yeah, if your child, like, let's say your young adult never left, right?
Mhm.
Pay attention to their behaviors, because if they continuously and now all of a sudden are sleeping, like their sleep cycle has completely reversed because they're up gaming all night, they don't come out and shower. They aren't doing their laundry. They're only eating because you make sure that they're fed. Like that is an extreme. And I would be worried as a parent because that's going to require some pretty substantial behavior changes and like a routine switch, which, when we think about certain things like, technology or anything that can be potentially addictive, you just want to pay attention to that because it can be a real slippery slope.
But yes, for sure. And speaking of technology, like I see even with my kids at a young age,
Yeah.
I'm just like it's crazy. Like the shows and all the colors and stuff, like they want to watch it constantly. So I'm like, we're always like, okay, guys, that's enough. Like we're gonna be done with TV for the next few days.
Yeah. And then they might be like upset about it, right? No, Dad, don't take it away. I wasn't done. Or like even scarier as a parent, if you're like trying to have a conversation with them and they are so locked in on what it is that they're watching that they're not even like responding to you. Like that's always like a, you get
It
your
it
eyes
it,
get real big.
it drives me batshit crazy. We'll put it that way.
You're like, pay attention. Pay
Yeah,
attention to me.
it's like I'm like, I know you're 6 and you only pick up like directions and like 1 in 25 things, but it's just drives me nuts. And that's where I find myself. That's where my anxiety comes in and
Yeah.
levels up. So I find myself like taking a step back, breathing, or
Yeah.
you know, doing the what is it, 5 4 3 2 1 method. That
Yep.
helps me a ton. So
Yeah. Yeah.
what conversations should parents be having with young adults before they go off to college and kind of even if they're not going to college, maybe they're
Yeah.
just starting their career, whatever it is they're doing.
I think that what I always love about this is to say, like, the path to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So, like, as a parent, you could, like, have the best of intentions with, we're going to have this conversation on this day at this time, and I'm going to help make sure that you're continuing to, like, move forward in your life. I think it's important as a parent, and this is like my best piece of advice is you could be saying the best thing. You could be saying the right thing. You could be suggesting like the absolute best path for them to pursue, but because it's coming from you as a parent, it may be falling on deaf ears entirely, right? Like it just like the same exact suggestion, the same exact like words verbatim coming from somebody that's a non-familial member is like sometimes all of a sudden like, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So really what I'm suggesting is as a parent, the best thing that you can do is make sure that your young adult has some sort of neutral party, like an objective professional, like a life coach, a mentor, somebody. I mean, therapists work too, but not every therapist is the same. So I'm going to be really careful about that. And because we're not necessarily talking about therapy per se, but just having someone to be able to process and also get some forward facing support and directions, right? Like, okay, cool, you want to be a mechanic. What steps do you need to take to do that, right? If I was a parent and I was suggesting to my kid like, hey, I did some research, I found these like programs, my kid would slam, the door in my face. Like, no, I'm not going to listen to you. But the second they have a mentor or a life coach that says, let's sit down and actually do a quick search of like what programs are nearby and let's look at like what the requirements are for you to apply and let's pick a place for you to actually fill out the application. Like, not hard, really not hard. Like, we're removing the resistance if you give them like a neutral party to work with.
And it's crazy to me that you as a parent can have that conversation and it just doesn't click. And then somebody else is like, they're like, oh yeah, that sounds great.
Right? I'm sure it's maddening because you're like, dang it, I said that.
I
Like,
said
this
the
is
same
my
thing.
idea. Exactly. Like,
It's great.
cool.
I think I remember some things like that growing up where it's somebody else told me and they're like, and it's like, Travis, I told you that a long time ago. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
guess I didn't listen.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure I had plenty of those moments. Like I just felt like my auto response for my parents growing up was no. Honestly, it was probably still no even until I like almost hit 40. Like, this is my life. I got this. But if I had anybody else suggest similarly what they were suggesting, like, hey, Joanna, take care of yourself, or hey, Joanna, maybe don't move there, or hey, Joanna, you shouldn't be in that relationship. Like, if it was coming from my parents, I was not hearing it. So think about that, like, especially when we're talking about the importance of like how vulnerable and impressionable and also heightened in this like phase of life development, because we also still have a fully non-developed brain for at least
Mm-hmm.
another like 7 years. So think about how impressionable they can be if you find like a great coach or you find a great mentor. like it could be life-changing for them because it's not an if, but when they hit some sort of now they have somebody that they can trust. And obviously I'm not saying that your kid's not going to go back and like ask for support when, like if they're licking wounds or something like that, right? If they have some sort of like heartbreak, but you want to make sure that they have somebody else that can also be there for them and support them moving forward, especially during this period of time.
Yeah, I absolutely love it because I've always said on this show that having people in your corner, a community, is huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
So during this phase of life, somebody who has already had a history of mental health issues,
Yeah.
how do you handle that and, as they're getting their independence and finding themselves?
I think that's where, I still think a mentor or a coach is important because it's very action oriented and forward facing and like, what do we need to do moving forward? But if there's any type of pre existing mental health concerns, I mean, obviously we're talking, there's a spectrum of what it is. And we've really, up until this point, only talked so much about like mood disorders or anxiety based disorders, which we know from a like Western medicine perspective, like with the right therapy, like the right therapeutic modality at the frequency that's necessary in an honest therapeutic relationship, maybe coupled with medication. I said maybe because, again, it depends on the person. Like sometimes that's all they need. Sometimes they need more. Sometimes they need groups. Sometimes they need like more intensive, like short bursts of kind of clinical support. Sometimes they need respite, which could look like actually living in some sort of supportive housing. Like, I'm not necessarily suggesting a residential treatment, but like for somebody that is launching into adulthood, in fact, actually, this is a perfect example. I get families all the time that will kind of come to me and they're like, hey, so we went through the college process. Our young adult went to insert a name of any school. They lasted 2 months, completely panicked, withdrew, and now we're hitting the reset. We do want to explore college. We have no idea where they're going to go. They definitely don't want to go back to the same school. Oftentimes it's just because they're embarrassed of like however they left, right? Like they didn't say goodbye to the very few friends that they had. And there's just like so much embarrassment about, well, how do I even like reintroduce myself? It's better for me just to have a clean slate, go somewhere else. I don't do college consulting, but what I tell people is that I am college informed, and I used to work in higher education, so at least I have like the college capital of like what resources exist on campus and what's actually sustainable for somebody that just needs these like short kind of like supportive experiences or resources, and then also who needs a team off campus. And so what I'm referencing is for that example of the young adult who went off to school and it's like, oh my gosh, we got to hit the reset. Instead of going through the college application process again to find a different school and then to do research of like what resources exist around, it's actually kind of the reverse order of let's find you a peer community of young adults that happen to be in like a micro community where they are getting mental health services, right? Outpatient therapy, maybe seeing a psychiatrist, definitely getting a lot of coaching, some sort of academic support. And then when they're in this little hub, right, that's when we look kind of outside in the periphery of what colleges are nearby where we can dip our toe back into a higher ed setting to get some success on a college campus and then build the like momentum of like eventually being in a place where, okay, now I can go off to college. Now I can go through the full like college application process again or transfer process, find a school, be a full-time student, and also the young adult is the one driving what resources they need to be successful with those pre-existing mental health conditions.
Very cool. And it's how often are you seeing like this reset happen?
I mean, can I tell you candidly that I've been doing this business for 10 years and a majority of my business is like this client. I work with 12 young adults at a time, not all like
Mm-hmm.
starting at once, but like I will max my caseload at 12 and I only work with them for 3 months. So if I'm working with somewhere between like say 36 to 48 clients a year, um, and a majority of those are this exact scenario, I think the answer right there is it's a shitload. And I like my caseload is such a small like sample of the
Mhm.
larger pool that exists. I mean, really, I worked in higher ed and I saw at two institutions, I worked at two different schools, I saw the same epidemic that was taking place, which was you get a bunch of students that come on campus, maybe 80% of them will actually stay for the next year. It's actually like closer to 75 nowadays. And then the like larger statistic is that those that actually come back the next year, a smaller, like it drops down to somewhere between 40 and 60% will actually stay the course and graduate within, I think now the like actual range that they use is 6 years. Not like hey, you're
Yeah.
gonna get your degree in 6 years, but it's just like that's the window of time that colleges are actually doing their measurements now. It's abysmal, Travis.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's
It's
crazy.
crazy.
And I'm trying to think back of when I was that age because I remember I didn't really need a reset, but I remember like just loving that I was away from home, even though I went to my first college, I went to a small junior college in the middle in central Utah. And I was only like 10 minutes away from where I grew up. So it's not like my family was too far away, but I could still do what I wanted. So
Hmm.
I stopped going to classes and ended up failing a lot. But I don't feel like I really needed the reset. It was just like, oh, I'm doing what I want.
Yeah.
I'm doing what I want.
Yeah. Well, and that reset for me sometimes looks like somebody made it all the way through to like a full semester or even 2 semesters and they failed, right? Like they
Hmm.
actually went through the process. And oftentimes the lens there is it's less about anxiety or, like depression. Sometimes it is. Obviously, if you're failing classes, like we can assume that part of that might just be like you're laying in bed, you're not even going to class. Sometimes it's they're like areas of wellness, like socially, they are knocking it out of the park because they're having so much
Hmm.
fun. It's like, yeah, I'm like living it up and, like on campus. And it's like school. Wait, what? I have to like show up and go to class and do work. Like that's also sometimes where the scales are tipped. And that's also somebody that I would end up working with because at the end of the day, there's actually a mental health component to it. If you've It almost feels a little bit like being an ostrich with your head in the sand of like, oh, if I just ignore the fact that I've failed my classes, like I'll still be okay. Like I guess I could still be a student. Meanwhile, they're getting outreach from the university. They've gotten letters that say, hey, by the way, if you don't get a certain GPA this semester, like you're not only on academic probation, but you're actually suspended. You're dismissed.
Hmm.
You are let go. You cannot come back until you have taken 12 or 15 credits at another school and actually demonstrated that you can be quote unquote successful. Then we'll reconsider having you come back. But oh, by the way, when you come back, you're still going to be on probation. So it's just like, talk about shame. That's really what
Yep.
this is. They're thinking traps. It's not necessarily mental health specific. It's just it's kind of like the adjustment of shifting from adolescent mindset to an actual like adult mindset where magical thinking is no more, does not serve us. And same with just being, having like natural consequences kind of
Hmm.
play out. But there's a lot of shame and sometimes that comes across too as it can manifest into depression. And so like great, I screwed up. Now I like failed. I am a failure, right? Like there needs to be a shift in doing some shame work there.
Yeah, I totally agree there. And when it comes to these like issues though, what's the most common mistake that families make when reacting to like a mental health crisis?
I think that's actually a great question because I think it really depends. The one thing that I think is most beneficial for parents is if you and this might sound actually kind of cliche, but I'm still going to say it. If you don't put your oxygen mask on in the crisis, like you cannot think straight. Like emotionally, every decision that you are making has potential consequence because you're not in the space to make a logical or rational decision. You are just making a decision to like, it's like survival essentially. So put your oxygen mask on, which to me means literally take some breaths. Also, just like in your immediate circle, ask for help. Who do you know? Who can be a resource? Because the other thing that's important to know as a parent is when your loved one is in crisis or having like an actual mental health crisis, it is damn near impossible for a parent to step out of that emotional space. So like, I just want to make sure that like you have to have somebody that could be neutral, that can actually think logically and rationally for you to guide you. And that could be ask your friends, who do they know? Speak with a therapist, like ask, don't just jump or do what one person tells you to do. Actually make sure you have an opportunity to like vet, make a decision, and like make sure that the plan is actually sound.
Love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. Let's see. Well, I had a thought. It kind of just disappeared. Sorry. It wanted to come out, but so when is it appropriate to, you kind of answered this in a way, when is it appropriate to consider a leave of absence or take a different path?
It's always okay. It's always a good time to take a different path. Like there's never a bad time to do that. And I don't really speak in absolutes. So the fact that I just made that like an absolute is impressive. Um, there's no wrong time. There's no wrong answer. It's always like you're just making a decision. And if now's the time to do it, then we're pursuing that path. And if you come to another fork in the road, again, there are no mistakes. They're just choices. And then we are living with kind of the direction in which those choices are taking us because we're learning, right? We are
Mm-hmm.
learning as we are literally like growing and going. Um, Taking a leave of absence, I mean, this is like more of a financially driven response. If your child is struggling on a college campus and you know when the drop deadlines are for some sort of financial like recoupment as a parent, especially if you are a part of like paying for their collegiate experience, then you pay attention to that because your young adult is not going to be paying attention to that. I can almost guarantee that as well. See, look, here I am talking in absolutes again. I can almost guarantee that your child is not paying attention to the drop deadlines. Again, if we're thinking about that ostrich with the head in the sand, they sure as hell are not thinking about deadlines for drop dates and like how that corresponds with certain percentages for refund for tuition.
Yep. Absolutely not. Like I said, I failed a semester, and that letter that was for me that said, "Oh, you need to get your grades back up. You're on academic probation." It went to my house, and my mom opened it. She's like, "Can you explain this?" I was like, yeah, I stopped going to classes and I didn't withdraw, which I should have done." She's like, "You just get it together." So that was the end of the conversation.
I mean, the
But I,
bigger question is,
yeah,
did you get it together, right? Or did you have another semester where you learned the hard way?
I honestly got it together
Okay.
for the most part. Later on, it took me years due to some. I had a couple kind of weird gap years, like as I went to school because of medical problems.
Mhm.
So there was a couple classes I failed, and it wasn't lack of me trying. It was the classes were tough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, but it's, but I eventually got it together because in high school, I was always like a 4.0 student. When I got to college, it changed a little bit because it was like, I just don't care.
Yeah.
So I think though, speaking of gap years,
Hmm?
I think they can be powerful.
Yeah.
Like they really can be, especially like if it's to, you know, take control of your mental health, take control of medical health, like whatever it is. Like maybe it's just finding your path to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will 100% back that and support it. Before COVID, I used to say college isn't going anywhere. And then it kind of like, I had to like insert my foot in mouth because clearly COVID spotlighted how poorly some colleges and universities were actually doing financially. Fortunately, most have course corrected, and so I feel I can go back to that statement and like feeling like it still rings true. What's more important in all of this is that post-secondary education in general is not going anywhere, right? What matters is somebody being okay, right? Like having their health, and not just mental health, like whole health, having their
Hmm.
health managed, because at the end of the day, if you're not okay, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you name it, you cannot show up in a classroom and be expected to like actually function, not just as a student that's responding in class and following through, but it's like just executive functioning in general. Can you initiate your homework assignments? Can you actually manage your time? Can you complete, like do the task completions? Are you also able to like regulate your emotions and all of the chaos that's going on? Like, are you organized? If you are not okay, all of that stuff really hard to manage. And so sometimes I think the other thing, and I'll just say this because, and then I want you to like, please respond. Hopefully you're feeling the same, is that sometimes parents just don't get it. And a part of that is because their belief system might be you just push through. Okay. All you have to do is just like go to school or just get your schoolwork done. Why is this so hard? And sometimes that clash is because parents still don't fully understand what mental health looks like for young adults. Again, it's a difference in generations or just a difference in how they believe that mental health can be a barrier or a hurdle for young adults. And it really does require certain supports in order to be able to show up as a student on campus.
Yes, very, very well said. Because then I can attest. So I want to I have a couple thoughts here. First of all, this age group that you were speaking of, 18 to 29 or
Mhm.
whatever, like it's very important to be able to get your crap together at this age because same thing holds true in the workforce.
Yeah.
Like if you're like having mental challenges, medical, whatever it is, and you don't show up, like that could be loss of a job. Like it's gonna happen. For me, there was a time period where I was having these medical problems, and with medical problems, my mental health always declines. It's almost hand in hand.
Yeah.
But so there was this time where I couldn't hold down a job, and I was basically moving from job to job because I was embarrassed that somebody was going to see me like so I have seizures. I was embarrassed somebody was going to see me have a seizure. There was times where jobs I got where I remember one where I had a seizure in the bathroom and nobody knew. And after that, I just left. I never went back. And that stuff like that happened all the time because I had to get over my embarrassment.
Yeah.
And like I think the same holds true. Like at this transition phase that we're talking about is if you feel dumb about it, don't. Like
Yeah.
there's somebody else around you, I guarantee it, that's going through the same stuff.
Yeah. And that's one of those things too, Travis, that like you and I can give that advice and until it's like really owned and understood, which sometimes when we're talking about this like still not fully formed brain, it's hard to not
Mm.
think. Like that's another
Y-
thinking kind of pattern too is like assuming that other people are judging you or thinking certain things about you, which is again another cognitive trap of like no, nobody's freaking paying attention to you, right? I mean, you and I can say that now like jokes aside, but when you're a young adult and you're in the moment, like it is terrifying. It's terrifying to the point where you're so embarrassed that you're like I'm just going to leave and I'm not even going to say goodbye. I'm not coming back. I just have to move on. I'm closing this chapter and like moving forward. And that's a real lived experience for a lot of young adults right now.
yeah, for sure. And the other point I wanted to touch base on too that I can totally relate to is you spoke about like parents not understanding. And it's to me, I think it's a generational thing a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I also think that it could be that there's certain aspects of mental health we don't talk a lot about because it's portrayed so poorly that you're depressed. Well, it's just a phase. You'll get over it. And it's
Yeah.
no, it's not. Yeah. And I'm talking, different than a bad hair day because we all have bad hair days. And if you don't, you're full of shit. You're lying to yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
But like I remember like me personally growing up, it wasn't talked about a lot. Mental health wasn't a thing. And so I had to figure out a lot of this by myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the beautiful yet double-edged sword of normalizing mental health is now we have this generation of younger people that really lean into it, right? Like they're owning it. Some almost on the extreme end of like, well, wait, hold on. Like, yes, you might have anxiety, but like that's not going to stop you from being able to like still experience life and need to like live
Mm-hmm.
independently and do things that are mundane, right? Like you still have to do that because we all do. But what it has created now is there's a essentially like a crevasse between their parents and them because their parents are kind of on the tail end of like again, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, right? Like figure it out. The only people that, had any type of more like disclosures about any type of mental health struggles, it was because it was on the extreme end, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
psychotic breaks or anything like that, where it's like that's even like visible, right? Sometimes we can see how that has actually created some sort of shift within you. Anyways, all I'm getting at is that the crevasse, the divide is very significant. We're still trying to bridge that gap as much as possible by educating parents on how sometimes what they say and how they say it. Obviously, we can't control how somebody reacts, but certainly there will still be a belief and there will be a behavior and a reaction out of it. And so it's like, well, if you are changing what you can what you can change, which is what you say and how you say it will have a ripple effect, which will potentially be more positive. And essentially, that bridge is just empathy. We're
Mm-hmm.
trying to bring in empathy and curiosity and support rather than solutions, abruptness, and just like a lack of interest or education.
Very well said. So, with that aspect, like, how can parents support their student or their young adult without becoming over involved?
I love that you asked this question because literally within the last like week, I have really I'll start by saying it's not me. It's not me. I am not it. Because I just still love and I always will love working with young adults. Like that's why I do what I do because I have this relationship with a 18, 19, 22-year-old, whatever. And it's like I can have an adult conversation, but when I'm having this conversation with you, you still present childlike in a lot of the vulnerabilities, a lot of the concerns, a lot of the fears. And so there's just like a tenderness that exists and I can hold that. And I like working with that young person and helping them feel empowered and like decisive and proud. Meanwhile, I can't do that and also turn to parent and say, "Hey, here's what you need to do," right? Because it just
Mm-hmm.
completely contradicts this piece of like rapport and autonomy and agency that I'm like supporting with the young adult. So there are amazing parent coaches that exist out there. And it is not meant to be a professional that is teaching you how to parent. I want to be really clear. A lot of their work actually is educating parents on brain science, nervous systems, again, communication or family dynamics. I mean, a lot of it is just education and that awareness and the coaching that exists there. Because it's not a therapist, so it's non threatening. It's just somebody who is helping a parent. So if you're the parent who says, I need to figure out how to fix my kid, right? Or I need to I need them to do XYZ. It's like you do understand that if you seek out finding the thing that's going to help them, kind of going back to our previous conversation, that they're not going to respond. But if you as a parent work with somebody and get curious about, I wonder why every time I do and say, an example of something, here's this dynamic that I see this reaction play out with my child. When my child reacts this way, then I respond this way. And here we are in this constant looped pattern. So if you are a parent and you're getting curious, how do I help my child? The answer really is, how do you help yourself with getting educated, becoming aware, and making your own just subtle changes? Because it really can be a ripple in a very large pond, which impacts not just you as a parent and your relationship with your young adult, but it does impact your young adult.
Yeah. And you brought up something that I'm sure you might have a different opinion on this, but I feel like a lot of times, so you're speaking of how the parent wants to fix their child, and which I can see it being true because being a parent myself, I always want to fix my child. But at some point, I feel like, so I'm kind of stepping away from the parent role for a minute. And as a person that has struggled with anxiety and depression, at some point, like I feel like the person struggling needs to be the one to kind of choose their path and basically admit that they have a problem. Because
Yeah.
if it's just if it was just my mom saying like, well, we're going to push you to do this, you're going to do this, or we're going to try this, I'd be like, I'd probably tell her to go to hell. Like, because I want to pick my own path. Like, at some point in my life, like, I didn't admit that I was struggling with these mental health
Yeah.
issues. And until
Yeah.
that day came, I wasn't willing to get the help that I needed to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's actually it brings up another good point, which is over the years, I've learned that in order for me in my role as a consultant, again, very, very small pool of people that I'm working with, I meet with the parents first, and then it's all with great intentions. Hey, okay, here's what's going on. You're going to work with my young adult. Here's all the things that like need to happen. And then I meet with the young adult, and the young adult's like, I don't need you. I don't need to change. Like, I'm good. My parents are the ones that are like panicking. And so you are spot on. You are absolutely spot on. And that's another reason why it's beneficial as a parent. If you're focused on how do I help my child, the best thing that you can do for yourself is work with a coach for yourself, because if you can get that support, it will, in fact, help your child. It's going to help the relationship that you have with your child. It's going to help the dynamic in the family. And it's probably going to give your child the space for them to help themselves.
Yeah. And I do have a question. Let me know, like, your thoughts. You just made me think of something else.
Okay.
Do you ever feel like maybe the child or the young adult needs to kind of fall on their face and hit rock bottom before they can get the help they need?
Yes. I mean, I think well, how do I answer this? I think everybody needs skinned knees, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
what it comes down to. Like, you have to skin your knees in order to understand that, like, okay, that hurts. I don't want to do that. What do I do differently next time so I don't skin my knees? But it just builds grit. It's resiliency. All of that shit translates. We need that in order to be able to function in all areas of life. Because like I said earlier, adversity does not like pick one socioeconomic group. It's like, unrelenting. Doesn't give a shit. It's like, we're going to have adversity. You're going to experience loss. You're going to experience grief. You're going to experience trauma. You're going to experience like all the hard things, and you have to be able to work through it. In order to work through it, you have to have experience to know that you can work through it. And so the other added element to it, to kind of specifically what you're talking about, is the fine line exists where if the life lessons that a young adult is making are irreversible or will do such significant damage that a family, if they don't intervene, like you said, like hitting rock bottom, like to me, I'm like, look, somebody gets a DUI, that's a life lesson. You
Mm-hmm.
owe a lot of money. Now you have to take these classes. Maybe that will scare you straight into understanding that like you're making really dangerous decisions. And if you do it again, you can harm yourself, harm other people. There's going to be more implications, like whatever the case may be, versus somebody who literally is drinking every day and then actually like, I mean, when you think about all the physical ailments that come with like serious alcoholism, like cirrhosis or like throwing up blood, or just like you're essentially burning your body from the inside out, right? Like, if we don't stop you right now, you're literally going to drink yourself to death. That's an opportunity to say, we're not going to let you get there. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want that rock bottom, but can I allow you the space to drive drunk? Not that I'm encouraging it. I don't know why I use this example, so I apologize, but I'm just going to keep going with it at this point. But it's like, okay, that happened. It happened once. Obviously, we want to provide some sort of support so that shit or anything worse doesn't happen again. Same thing for mental health, right? Like, okay, yes, you're struggling with depression. Yes, you're struggling with anxiety. We're going to let you get the support that you need, or just struggle on your own. If you're saying, no, I don't need help. No, I don't need help. But when we notice that it's getting really bad, right? Like anxiety, then kind of somehow turning into almost OCD like ruminations or obsessions, or like, again, you are agoraphobic, right? Like whatever the case may be, a family at some point will have to say, like, we can't let it get to this point. So we're going to, again, still give you the space to figure it out on your own, but at some point we do have to intervene.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's answers my question
Yeah.
perfectly. It's it's like I'm trying to think. Not too much of my family listens to my podcast, so I think I'm safe. But there's something going on with someone in that age group,
Mm,
and we're just hearing all sorts of stories. And it's like the parent keeps saying, like, "Oh well, I don't know how to help this person." It's
mm,
like I think you need to let her fall a little bit more
yeah.
until
Yeah.
she kind of realizes, like, I need the help. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying like all the way, but like a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think that there's also parental anxiety that sometimes impedes that process. Like, is the parent panicking and saying, like, I feel uncomfortable watching this, like runaway train, essentially? Like, is their experience right in this moment and like an overacting, and or it's their own anxiety that's creating more than is necessary, and really like what's playing out is a normal young adult, like experience launching into adulthood, maybe having some experiences that feel risky or dangerous, but it's not completely like there's no like hard lesson learned, or at least hard lessons learned yet. So it feels like it's an overreach from the parent. And if they kind of act out right now, then we're not giving that young adult the space to have the learned life lessons. Now, can we protect our kids? Not entirely, right? Like there are situations that we just can't protect them from. But if something extreme does happen, then we just know that we have to lean in harder, and the help that they're going to get later might just be for like a more intense like need of support rather than something simple like just going to see a therapist. I say that like in quotes, just going to see a therapist.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. And it's like coming from the parent side back to my parent mode here.
Mm,
I always want to protect my kids, but at the same time, I'm learning slowly of when to step back and be like, nope, this is a conflict that you need to learn how to deal with by yourself because I'm not always going to be there.
yeah. Yeah. And good for you. I mean, with your oldest only being 6, like that's fantastic that you're actually able to stop yourself in the moment. I mean, it doesn't mean that you're not physically in the same space,
Yeah.
right? Like watching it go down, but you're still like, okay, I'm not going to actually intervene. This is an opportunity for my child to learn how to deal with this.
And the only thing that I'm struggling with right now is them trying to get my two oldest to clean up after themselves and realize that mom and dad are not the ones that do the cleaning up,
Yeah.
that they can do it too.
She's going to keep
But that's,
they're going to keep pushing you though, right? Are
yes.
you sure? Really, it's like a test. Like, what is your tolerance for dirtiness, right? Like all the clothes on the floor or whatever. It's just
Yeah.
like, oh, God, this is killing me. But I've
Yeah.
asked you several times to clean it up.
Yeah. I feel like this is a whole different conversation that we could have for hours. Yes, yes. Uh, short story. Sorry, I got side note here. My they'll make messes. I get that they're 6 and 4 or whatever, but it's like, okay, mom, dad, your turn to clean it up. We made the mess. It's like, no, that's not how it works. My 4-year-old actually turned around and looked at me straight in the eye and said, "But dad, you're our slave." I was like, I am not. That's not how this works. Uh, I was like, You have a lot of learning to do there, kid."
Yeah, and in the same breath, you're also like, and you know me so well right now. Like,
Yeah, it
how did
was.
this just get called out?
Well, it was also a moment of like self-reflection because it's
Yeah.
like, what did I do to make them feel like that?
Yeah.
All right, sorry. Little anecdote there.
It's a good point, though, Travis, because I will say sometimes I get parents all the time that are like, what do we do? And I'm like, the bigger question is I wish that this question had been asked when your kid was sick, right? When your kid was 12, when your kid was 16, because then we wouldn't be, again, not entirely true, but a majority of the cases that I work with, it's like if there had been an opportunity for more skinned knees, right? More learned life lessons, more grit, more resiliency, less like over management and support, like literally protected in a bubble. And then when they go off to college and it's the prime opportunity for, again, meeting new people, exploring new places, like this is your belief system where you're saying how I was raised, what do I want to take from that and apply for myself as I'm putting myself out into the world, meeting new people, starting new relationships, and trying to figure out what my calling is. I mean, like the combination of all that, if you haven't had those experiences or those moments where you skinned your knees or where your parents said, you got to learn to pick up yourself, right? You're 6, you took the toys out, now it's time for you to put the toys away. That translates to picking up after yourself when you're living alone or when you're
Mm-hmm.
living in mutual spaces, like respect for others. I mean, like there's so many life lessons that literally can be taught for elementary aged young people. Like there is no reason why when they come off to college or they're launching into adulthood and we're like, we don't have any skills and I have zero grit. Like, what am I supposed to do? Parents, come help me, right? And then it breeds all of the like, I mean, really, it's like it feels like kind of fruit flies just
Mm-hmm.
waiting for like the rotting fruit, which can be like somebody that's impressionable and already was potentially struggling with some mental health issues, and now it's just like tenfold.
Yeah, for sure. And it's back to the skin knees. Like you need to let your kids experience life. Like you need to, like you said, let them be able to build up that grit and
Yeah.
resilience.
Yep.
If not, by the time they get to college, they're going to be pissing a lot of people off.
Yep. And they'll just have, more pain points than were necessary, like failed
Yeah.
semesters or failed relationships or, like throw in money. I mean, like, I kind of picture it sometimes of like the students that did not do well academically. I tell parents all the time, like, put a pile of money in a bonfire and just light it. Like, that's essentially what you just did. And if you have that much money and you are like, this is not a problem, then I just like roll my eyes at you. That's annoying. That's not the majority.
Yeah.
College is an investment. Your child's future is an investment. So we want to make sure that we're making wise investing decisions. And sometimes that means like we need to take a step back and not like continue to push this person down a path that's like setting them up for some pretty significant fallouts.
Well, and also on to that point is if you're just throwing that money away, your kid keeps failing and doing whatever, what are you teaching that child?
Exactly. Yeah. Like it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter. We'll take care of you.
Yep, exactly. So kind of just a one last question and then a few follow-up questions here is if a young adult feels like they failed during this transition phase, what would you want them to hear right now?
I think the only thing that I would say, yes, I'll speak for myself. I have used the word failed several times during this conversation, and every example I was giving literally was pertaining to an internalized perception of failure or the fact that you literally got a bunch of Fs on your transcript. The latter, is failing. You failed several classes. But going back to kind of like the general time period, what I would love to encourage for any young adult that heard this story is that there is no such thing as failure. These are learned experiences. Things may not work out, but it's an opportunity for somebody to reflect and say, okay, maybe I'm going to do this differently next time. What will that look like? And if you want to focus on it and view things as failures, then you're building this growing narrative of like essentially making it harder for yourself to, like, almost like picturing like digging a hole, right? Like the more negative self-talk you have, oh gosh, I did it again, here you go, right? It's like you're digging this hole. It's harder to get out of the hole when you have this like consistent narrative that feels just, again, self-deprecating, versus if you look at it and say, "Oh, that sucked. Wow, that just like blew that up," whatever the case may be. But then you actually shift to say, "What did I learn from this? What will I do differently?" Again, I just say that now that I feel like I'm repeating myself. But if you're able to see the like lessons learned, like the benefit of like the birth of whatever it was that you took away, then that's not a failure at all. That's just an experience. It's a life lesson, and you are continuing to move forward.
I absolutely love it. I once was told when I was interviewing somebody on this podcast that it's never too late to rewrite your story.
Mm,
And like I feel like that fits in kind of with what you're saying. And it's like learn from it, move on, and you can write new chapters.
yeah. I think the other thing that I would just kind of tag along with that is that oftentimes and this is where parental differences also vary, like young adults right now, like we're not talking about millennials, we're talking Gen Z, are experiencing, I'm going to butcher this, but I'm still going to pretend like I know. There was some data point out there not so long ago that was saying that they're going to have like 9 jobs, like, and like several of those are in very different career paths. So really trying to normalize that, like, the idea gone is the idea that like at 18 or 21, you are in a job and you're locked into that job for 30 years and you're seeking it out. So you get, a pension or retirement. And even though that job sucked, you still like push through because this was what you were, like basically, again, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, like suck it up. This is the career path that you chose. We don't have that anymore. We have normalized that it's okay to switch gears. I mean, shoot, Travis, you talked about it. Like, you had different jobs, right? Like, this
Hmm.
is normal. So, again, no failed experiences, just like use it as an opportunity to learn and move on.
Heck, I was in my probably these before I really figured out what I wanted to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I think I was 30 or 31 when I was like, I'm going to start this business. And I can't tell you how many jobs that I had between undergrad through grad school and beyond. Like, for me to work somewhere for more than 2 years was like, I mean, might as well have thrown a party to like celebrate the fact that that was like tenured.
But you said it's and nowadays though you're starting to see it more normalized, like you said, to not sticking around jobs for too long because a lot of these, I think, it's kind of started with my generation of they switching jobs like every 2 to 3 years
Mhm.
to because it's I'm in this. I feel like I'm in the generation where you're seeing a lot of these tech companies. So
Mm,
like a lot of the tech companies come and go,
yeah.
and so it's like you're switching every 2 or 3 years because maybe you get a better opportunity, something that helps you with growth.
Yeah.
So it's not totally abnormal.
No, not at all. Yeah, I mean, this is the look, if you want to view it as a failure, view it as a failure, but still know that life isn't linear. You can have as many jobs as you want. You can change course as many times as you want. Wherever you go, there you are. So if the bigger problem is like it's not the jobs, it's me, then that's an
Yeah.
opportunity to say, maybe I should stop for a second and think and get some support. But otherwise, again, I just want to normalize that, like, it's okay to change course.
Yep. And I'm at that point right now where it's like I'm wanting to get away from the 9 to 5 and to have my
Mm.
own thing. So I'm like, my wife told me the other day, she's like, well, maybe this is like your midlife crisis. And I said, I don't want to think that I'm having a midlife crisis, but whatever it is, well, we'll see what pans out. But uh, now, just kind of a couple follow-up questions here. What in your mind is the biggest stigma when it comes to mental health?
I think the biggest stigma that exists right now is that. Sorry, I got really distracted. My dog
No,
is
you're
snoring
you're
so loud that I was like, actually, like totally distracted my train of thought because I like heard him very loudly. Okay, so probably the biggest stigma that still exists is that sometimes, it's not a phase. Sometimes it's not a phase. Sometimes it really is lifelong support or a need for lifelong support. It just looks differently at different points in somebody's life. And I think the other thing that I would throw out there too is that certainly there are, especially working in kind of like the mental health field, there are diagnoses that are more themed at times. And so like, back in the whatever early 2000s, it was like every young boy had ADHD, right? Like, yeah, like there you go. He's got ADHD. Great. That made complete sense why like this young person wasn't able to sit in class or was constantly running around or not redirectable. Now I feel like it's more common for anxiety. Again, we're just talking about kind of the nature of who is around. There's a lot more young adults that I'm meeting with that have an autism diagnosis. Like that's kind of newer. But I think the important piece in all of this is for the stigma that mental health, it doesn't mean that, it's not a death sentence, right? And it's not a quick fix either. Sometimes it is something that can be like supported and redirected and like with the right therapy, with the right kind of like cadence of support, it can be managed and really feel like it's dormant altogether. And then there are other mental health conditions that you just have to learn how to handle and live with for the rest of your life. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, you named it earlier, like Joanna, your superpower is your anxiety. Like, yes, but I've also figured out how to make sure that I'm taking care of myself where my anxiety doesn't spill over into my work or doesn't spill over into my personal relationships. It's like I'm constantly just having to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. Like that's it.
absolutely love it. And I think that's key right there is learning how to take care of it. So that's one thing I didn't realize when I started like doing heavy therapy last year or the year before, whenever it was,
Mm.
is I thought, I could go to therapy and all this stuff would disappear. And then my therapist turned around and is like, no, it doesn't go away. You you just have to learn techniques to deal with it.
Yeah.
I was like, huh. And once I learned those techniques, like I was like, it totally makes sense now. Like, I don't know why I thought it would go away because it's been here for years.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that actually, can I just say that too? I wouldn't call this a stigma per se, but it's probably just a theme that I really see is that, and I do get a chuckle out of this. And your example just made me think about this. Sometimes I'll get parents that'll be like, oh my gosh, my 25-year-old, like, we got to figure this out. And I'm like, well, how long has this been going on? They're like, well, it probably started when they were 6. And I'm like, so you are, like, I just want to like get real clear on expectations that you're wanting me to find resources, maybe for a 3-month period that's going to course correct 20
Years.
of patterns and behaviors. Like, I just want to make sure you understand that, like, there's a serious disconnect in the reality of the situation and the expectations that you have for support. And as long as, like, oftentimes when a young adult or a parent, they're like, oh shit, yeah, I guess that does make sense. Then all of a sudden it's like, cool, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And like, if you focus on the marathon, it actually goes way more smoothly.
Yes.
But if you focus on it being a sprint or this quick fix, it's a mess for everybody.
Yep. Yep. And you'll just keep hitting those brick walls.
Yeah, so don't go to therapy thinking like I'm gonna speak with a therapist and I'm gonna have like 3 sessions and I'll be good. It's just like, no, they're not magicians.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, in my defense, I thought it was going to be at least 6.
Yes, of course. I mean, I only kid because
I
truly
know.
the first time I went to therapy too, my therapist was like, slow the fuck down. Like, Joanna, this is not you word vomiting everything that's happened up to this point and like, tell me what I do to do the quick fix, right? It was like, I totally went into that way, but that's also because I was just naive to understanding like the depth of my situation and what it was going to take in terms of effort for me to make changes. Like you said, like what your therapist said, like here are the things that you need to do to actually be able to manage yourself. And like that is the crux of the work.
Yep. Yep. And it's just an ongoing thing. And there's times where like I haven't been to therapy for a while, but it's like there's times where I know in the future I'll probably need it again just to help me get out of that rut.
I like to think of therapists as like tune-ups, right? Like especially if you have had a good therapist where you've learned some of like this again, some skills that you can apply yourself long after the therapist is gone. But it's okay to have tune-ups, right?
Hmm.
Just like every once in a while we just need to get like, a little like grease on the wheels, a little like, brake check, like, we got to make sure we're safe. And that's we can translate that into like there's no shame in going to see a therapist for a couple minutes. And I also think couple minutes, couple sessions, whatever. Clearly I'm starting to get tired too. Now like time is a construct. Yeah, anyways.
Yeah. I'm getting to the point where like everything's funny. Like even though
Yeah.
it's only like 7 o'clock here, but it's yeah. So
Travis, it's way past my bedtime.
I'm a night owl, so it's that's I have that going for me. I'm not a morning person at all. So kind of last two things here is just kind of house cleaning items. Where can people find you?
Best place to go is lilleyconsulting.com. My website, and it's Lilley spelled with an E and a Y. So Lilley, consulting.com. And that's where you'll find all the details about what I do. I've written a ton of blogs, which is more geared towards parents. So if you're a parent of a young adult or even an adolescent, like reading some of that stuff would be probably helpful. And I also host my own podcast called Success is Subjective, uh, where I have over 340 some interviews at this point of people really like spotlighting their emerging adult years. Again, trying to talk through the just normalizing life is not linear. Like you don't have to know at 18 what you're going to do the rest of your life. And like, again, shit happens. And I'm just trying to highlight people that have also shown interest in demystifying or redefining what success looks like for them now that they're no longer in this like, again, high pressure identity development period in their life. So, and speaking of, I'd love to have you as a guest. So we can talk about that as a sidebar, but that for listening to the podcast, you can find that on any podcast playing platform, but you can also just find the actual episodes themselves on the lilleyconsulting.com website.
Awesome. And last thing here is we covered a lot of ground. Is there anything that you'd like to bring up that we did not discuss?
I'm sure if I really thought about it, there's probably something, but I also feel like we talked about so much that I'm going to say no. I think we're good. I think this is a great conversation.
I totally agree with you. So from there, I just want to thank you for coming on and having a great conversation with me. That's all I can ask for. But this went beyond that. So thank you. I really admire what you're doing with the younger generation and, just finding ways to help that generation out and help them kind of get through that transition phase.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me and thank you for having this podcast because this platform is important. So thank you for what you're doing too.
Thanks, Joanna. And thank you to all that are listening. The best thing you can do if you resonate with this episode is to share it and give us a follow. Thanks again. Until next time.